Thank you so much. Well, we're in for a surprise this service. As I said in the first two services, I actually spoke the first two, but the third one, we are so blessed to have a special guest speaker today. And you are going to be greatly, greatly encouraged. He has been a part of this church. He's been for years. He's been a part of our lives. And just sitting right here amongst us here is somebody who's impacted the world in an unbelievable way. His amazing family, his wife, and Nadia, who sang here earlier today on stage in the worship team, and just an unbelievable family of great influence. And Gerardo is very, very special. Today, we are blessed and to have him share, and there's actually a new TV show that's going to really talk about this unbelievable experience on VH1 about his life and where he used to be, where God has taken him today, so they'll be able to capture a little bit on that here today. It's going to be a wonderful time, but Gerardo is a rapper and singer who became a recording industry executive, and I love this, and more recently, a youth pastor. He was born in Ecuador. His family moved to we have some Ecuadorians, all right. His family moved to Glendale when he was 12 years of age. His first major appearance in show business was as Ricky in the 1987 film Can't Buy Me Love, and he also had the role in the 1988 film Colors. His hit single, Rico Suave, appeared on his 1991 debut album, Mo Ritmo, and the album peaked as high as the top 36 on Billboard Top 200, and the single peaked as high as number 4. But now, even greater, as an A&R executive at Interscope Records, he has helped sign Enrique Iglesias and Bubba Sparks. In 2013, he discussed his newest life and newest focus as a Christian youth pastor on the Katie Couric Show. I want you to welcome, we are so blessed to have one of our very own, our friend, Gerardo Mejia. Come on, let's welcome him here today. Let's honor him in the house of God. We love him, man. He's family to us here today. This one? Yeah. Love you, man.
Love you. Thank you, Pastor. Hello. How's everybody doing today? That's what it feels like. See, I've been where you guys are at for years now. And I can tell you, Pastor, I want to thank you because I've received so much goodness from just sitting there. You know, I not only just through Sundays, I mean, Thursday night is like the MVPs of preachers come here. You know, and they come here and they give these, it's like they get ready for, you know, their best sermon, right? So I get to catch on Thursday, you know, these incredible preachers. And then on Sunday, I got Pastor Matthew. See, I have Tuesday Bible studies at my house for the last 7 years. So if you came to Angela's Temple and then you came to a Bible study, it was actually a recap of Thursday and Friday. All right, so I hope, Pastor, that, you know, it ain't a sin to bite sermons. Well, I'm going straight to Hades because I've gotten the best of what I got in here, and I try to give it to the people that come to my Bible study. But today, you know, I want to talk to the men here, and the women, of course, but, you know, I want to talk to the tough men here. And we're going to read first from Nehemiah 4:14. So if you have a Bible, turn to Nehemiah 4:14, which is right between Ezra and Esther. Right? Somewhere around that. Okay, Ezra and Job. There you go. Somewhere around there. Now it says here, Nehemiah 4:14. I see. First of all, I'm a movie buff. All right, so I'm going to talk it like you know, like I was, you know, like Nehemiah is just telling this, you know, all these people out there right now to prepare themselves. And it says, after I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. Now Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king of Persia. You know, it was a big deal back then to be a cupbearer. Basically, you stop, you know, anybody try to poison, you know, the king, you know, you got first dibs on that poison. You know, you got a little, so it was, you know, he had to be somewhat brave to take that role, right, Pastor? You had to be somewhat brave. And as man, there's always that, that brave thing that happens with us, now, especially in the physical, man. So that, that verse reminds me a little bit of, remember Braveheart? Yeah. Remember Braveheart? You guys saw the movie Braveheart? Yeah. Old school people here. I remember, when Mel Gibson was out there and was talking to the people and getting everybody riled up and talking to the Scottish and, telling them, and his face was blue and, getting them riled up. See, that gave me an epiphany, because I think that as men, we got to fight for our families till we're blue in the face. Yeah. And then also another great movie I like, Gladiator. Who didn't see Gladiator? Russell Crowe, right? He had those scenes again. The people are out there and he's giving the big speech. I mean, who doesn't love, Russell Crowe and Maximus? I didn't really like Russell Crowe, and Noah with the rock puppets, but I like Maximus, and one of the things that one of the scenes that I love is, remember when Joaquin Phoenix was telling him, Spaniard, take off your mask. Yeah. Remember that? Spaniard, take off your mask. And, and at that moment, he had to man up, right? He had to, let him know what's up. He took off his mask. And I remember, I can't do the accent, but, he was saying, I am Maximus Decimus, whatever his last name is. And, I'm a father to a murdered son, a husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my revenge in this life or the next, right? As man, I looked at it, I was like, oh my goodness, this dude is dope. This guy is tough, man, And a lot of times as man, we get to that point. There's a time that we as men are going to need to man up, As a Latin man growing up in a Latin family, it's required. I'm Ecuadorian. My dad was tough. My dad was tough, man. My mom will tell you right here, my dad, I heard stories later on in life, after my dad passed away, from everybody coming to, saying that, your dad, bro, he got down, And back then it was all about fists. Now you can't get down nowadays because, somebody pulls up something else and, party's over. But back then, people, would fist up and you would man up for things, And my dad used to love, he used to love movies too. He would, quote The Godfather. I think he saw it like 50 times, right, Ma? He loved The Godfather, right? One of his lines, Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you, but don't ever take sides against the family again. Right? So that thing was instilled in me about the family had to be tight. Yeah. My mom was tough too. I mean, my mom was a pretty lady. But one time, I remember my brother got yelled at by some older lady. And my mom got up, knocked on the door, and in her English, she said, don't you talk to my son like that, you crazy woman. And Mom was tough too. We had tough people. My brother was tough. He was younger than me, but he was a boxer. He used to, use me as a punching bag. So I had no option but to somehow, be tough, or try to be at least, man up at times. But, family, man, family can be funny sometimes. We love them. Something happens in our lives and we turn to Christ, but they're the toughest ones to deal with. My goodness, I remember when, I came to the Lord and my family, my mom came, my brother and everybody, and it's like nobody wanted to see us. It was like knocking on doors, you just saw them like hide, You call them on the phone, nobody would return your call. And it's like the family is, even the grandmother, right? The grandmother, oh man, don't talk to her about what you just, what happened in your life right now, because she's been this for so many years, you're going to offend her. But we as people, as men at times, we man up so much in the physical. We forget about the spiritual. Yes, that's good. We let that go. Yeah. What happened to us, guys? We turn into sissies at the moment, a storm happens that doesn't have to deal with, putting up your fist, but it has to deal with fighting with the other you. The other you, the one you left at home today. Yes. The one that you're supposed to bury it and be 6 feet under, but it keeps on crawling back like in the movies. You know? The one that only your computer knows.
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
The one that gives you away when you click history. That guy. That's the toughest guy to deal with. You know? And there's times that are going to arise when you're going to need to man up, guys. See, I used to have an incredible testimony, man. Man, it was like, I'll put it in a nutshell. Basically, I came to the Lord at an early age, at 17, believe it or not. Right? But because of, you know, I wanted to be famous and I wanted to stand out, you know, I parted from the Lord, and, you know, the devil opened all these doors for me. I thought, God, thank you, man. You know, I got this movie. God, thank you. You know, you opened doors for this. And a lot of times, God doesn't open those doors. And I was getting myself into all these situations. Yeah, sure enough, I became famous because the devil knew that that's what it took for me to bounce. You know, and in those days, man, you know, man, I toured the world. Pastor, I was on 50 Most Beautiful People, by the way. In 1991, you know, I mean, in the eyes of the world, these are good things, right? Yeah, you go like, oh, you know, yeah, back in the day or whatever. You know, my daughters and my kids are like, oh, God, Dad, you know, everybody's talking about you at school. Why did you take off your jacket and this and that? And they had to deal, you know, with the consequences of me back then, you know. But, man, the manning up part, man. In those days, man, you know, I was famous, and you know, I wanted more, and I was selling millions of records. And then one day, all those millions of people that bought my records, they went to the next person. And as a person, man, you know, being in that spot, I didn't know what to do, right? At the moment, I was trying to hang on to whatever I had, you know. Thank the Lord, I was dating a beautiful woman. And I said, man, I'm marrying this woman before everything stops. You know. And, you know, I got married, and, you know, we did the whole thing for the TV, you know, it came out in the papers, Gerardo got married. I got married with Elvis, was, you know, married. I wanted to, you know, marry with Elvis in Vegas, the whole thing. The whole portrayal, because you guys, what you guys see on the magazines and on TV, it's a fantasy. It's what they want you to see, right? So it wasn't like goodness was going on. I was terrible. For the 10 first years of my marriage, I was an adulterer. As everything that was taken away from me, the only thing that was left was the attention I could still get. And I was awful to my wife. And like I said, in a nutshell, that was my testimony. And then God came into my life at an incredible time. Because it wasn't, see, a lot of times, you know, I was talking to Enrique the other day, and he's asking, man, you know, you Christians, a lot of time, man, you guys got to hit rock bottom, and then you become Christians. I'm like, bro, I've hit rock bottom like 10 times. You know? And when I came to the Lord, it was at a good time in our lives. We're financially fit. It wasn't, I've hit rock bottom. You know, it wasn't at that time. It was just time for me. I didn't have any excuse not to serve the Lord anymore. You know, he had been there in the good times and the bad times, and I'm like, what is stopping me from serving 100% now? And I did, and my life changed, man. And it was an incredible ride, you guys. Incredible. I mean, I got to give my testimony at places, man, that not even back in the day when I was famous. That song Sueña that you heard, I had a top 10 hit in Italy. I never even visited Italy as Rico Suave. It never hit. You know, I mean, I got to be in, the Lord was just telling me, listen, I'm going to replace all this that you thought had value, or we're going to put it here. You know, and he did, man. And I'm telling you, through years, traveling, going to many places, speaking, I spoke at many Spanish countries throughout the world. I thank the Lord for the opportunity. And I've been able to see hundreds of thousands of people come to the Lord after giving a testimony, after singing. I was like, man, it can't get better than this, you know? I mean, I got to kick the devil in the face, step on his head, you know? But 3 years ago, a storm hit. See, when storms hit, man, man starts shaking in a second. You know, what happened? My father got a seizure, and he collapsed one day, and we were in the hospital back and forth. I love my dad. You know, my dad was like just an awesome man. You know, the awesome thing, I'm going to tell a little bit of the story, because the awesome thing about my dad was that, you know, he was the last one to accept the Lord. My dad had problems with drinking, right? I don't want to say he's an alcoholic because my mom's here, but he had problems with drinking, you know. But everybody loved my father, right? And when I least expected it, because we were all talking, we were all praying for him for years. Prayed with my mom, prayed, you know, with my brother, everybody prayed for him, and nothing happened. And then one day, I catch him at my house. I'm like, where you going? I said, I'm going to church, Dad. He goes, I said, what are you doing? He goes, I'm hungover. I said, you want to come? He said, I'll go. Like that. I didn't do nothing. Because a lot of times as Christians, we try to manipulate, we set up, you know, you be there, in intervention, you know. But it was just God. It was just the Lord. You know, we went in that day, man, sure enough, you know, the pastor, you know, made the call. And I could see him just like looking around. And of course, my mom was right next to him. She's like, stop. You know, he's budging him to go up there. He wouldn't. And the pastor says, Mr. Mejia, would you come on up? And he did, and he accepted the Lord. And, you know, again, this storm came to my life. My father was in the hospital. He was on a respirator for 150 days. He couldn't get out of it, and the Lord took him. I call that a Category 4 storm. It wasn't a 5 because he knew the Lord. If he didn't know the Lord, man, oh my goodness, I would have been scrambling to do whatever I could, you know, but my father went with the Lord, and he's there now. And you know, at that point in my life, I was going through mourning, and it was a tough time. You know, guys, you know, it was tough to accept that, you know, because a lot of times you start thinking, Lord, why'd you take him? Lord, why, you know, it wasn't, you know, later on you learn, you'll get your answers. Be patient. You know, as this happened, a year later, right? I come back from Ecuador, because I go to Ecuador a lot. The Ecuadorians in the house. I go back and forth, and I was starting to get into politics because somebody had this idea. Look, Gerardo, you're doing good with your music, motivating people. Well, why don't you get in there in Congress and you can make some laws and blah, blah. Right? I'm like, all right, let's do it, you know. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. So I went and I started politicking and doing this and all over the place. And as I was doing this, man, you know, it was about, I didn't consult with the Lord about it. It was just, I'm going to do it. I think I can do it. I think I can handle it. You know, I'll take on, you know, the task. You know, nobody gave me the task. A lot of times we as Christians, we become Christians. We come to church and we're like, I'm going to change. We're going to hold this big concert. We're going to bring these people. And all this stuff doesn't work out for you. And you try to blame the Lord when the Lord tells you, I didn't tell you to do that. And you get a bitter taste in your mouth. It had nothing to do with God. So I arrived one day to the airport, and a friend of mine comes against me. I think, you know, I've been busy. I was dealing with, you know, the music, with Enrique, with this, with preaching. My head was all over the place, Pastor. And, you know, for a long time, you know, I put my family on the backdrop, you know, and I was like, bam, 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 and doing this and doing that. And then I get picked up by a friend of mine, and he was with another guy. And I don't know where this guy comes up. He goes, hey, man, you carry a heavy load, brother. Why don't you just let all that go? I was like, what? And I look at my other friend, which I know, my friend Walter. I'm like, dude, who is this guy? He goes, hey, man, he's a good brother, man. Just listen to him. He has a gift. I'm like, why, whatever, you know. The next day, I bring him to my house, because, listen, man, my house, God has blessed me with a beautiful home. It's open. You guys want to come by? You're all invited, right? So I let people in and out of my house all the time, right? So they came in, and he told me, listen, can my friend Donnie spend the night? And I was like, sure, it can't be that bad. You're a great guy. You have discernment. You'll know if he's a killer or, a murderer, So that night, he spent the night. The next day, I look at Donnie and I said, Donnie, man, let's go get some blueberry pancakes. He goes, I love blueberry pancakes. Let's go. So I take him out to eat. We go to Mimi's Cafe, and we're having, and then he tells me, my brother, I've been trying to tell you something that God put in my heart. I just didn't want to tell you because, I don't know you that well. I don't know how you're going to react. I said, well, what is it? He says, the Lord says, though you're about to lose everything you value, everything that you thought was worth something is going to be taken from you. But remember one thing, you are the glue. I was like, what? Bro, give me a better prophecy than that, man. I said, don't tell me that, and after that day, I started walking around. What was that? What could it be? Because, there's a lot of brothers in the church that will come up to you and say, hey, I got a word for you. And they don't even hit near what's going on, And you're like, all right, But there's brothers I know that came up to me, and I just start shaking, They see it. I had another woman in the last church I went to that, you saw her coming to you, just, and she's like, are you okay? And you're like, start crying. You gave it all up at that moment. Those type of people. But then, that night also he comes to my house, and, I opened the door, and I say, he was on his knees. And I know, what's he doing? He was crying. So I go to Walter, I say, Walter, what is going on? What's happening? Donnie is crying on the floor. And he was crying right in front of all my family pictures. I said, what is happening? And then Walter came back and told me, he's crying for your family. I was going crazy, man. Imagine as a guy, what is it? What is it? What? And I couldn't sleep. So I get up in the middle of the night. My heart is shaking. I never had anxiety in my life. My heart is shaking. I'm like, what could it be? And I look over my wife, and I picked up the phone. And once again, adultery's snuck its ugly face in my life. Just this time it wasn't me. My wife fell for the lie. And it had to be the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. My brothers in discipleship, I know about the anxiety. I know about waking up in the middle of the night and your heart's going 150 beats per minute. I know about crying out to God, going, why? Why did this have to happen to me? Because you start thinking, you're like, Lord, I'm serving you. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. And God's like, you're going to learn. This is for you. Patience. But there was no patience in me. Because see, as man, we man up right back when it comes down to getting down. Somebody said something about your mom, boom, right? But somebody's infiltrates your camp. And it has to do with changing you more than anything. You don't want to hear about it. You don't want to fight no more. You want to get out the ring and throw in the towel. Right, man? Yeah. We're so quick to forgive our kids. What happened to our wives? Why is this darn country so messed up on divorce? What happened? That guy used to tell me, because my mentality was, I'm out. This is it. I'm not dealing with this, and it was wrong. I don't want a part of this. But in it, you start understanding and seeing that you're responsible for a lot of it. God starts revealing to you so much. And the awesome thing about it, fellas, is, man, I love the Lord that all these years, because if this would have happened to me 10 years ago, I was gone, brother.
Right.
But it happened when I was preaching about forgiveness. I was preaching about love. You know? But when it came down to somebody making a mistake in my life, it wasn't about love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Does not envy. Does not boast. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It doesn't bring up the record of wrongs. Man, I wasn't patient with my wife. I was not kind. I was rude. I was angry. And every opportunity I got to bring up the past, I did. I destroyed her. I mean, one time, Mom, do you remember that time that I came in? That I got so beat up physically and my eyes were shut. You opened the door, you almost fainted. Remember? I got in a big fight. Eventually, that goes away. You get better. But what comes out of the mouth of man can do irreversible damage. You mess somebody up. And as this is going, I said, I'm taking off. I took off to Ecuador, said, baby, I'm gone. This is it, whatever, I'm gone. And when I go to Ecuador, the great thing about this is that I have brothers in Christ. So whenever I talk to somebody, it was like, bro, you gonna give up 20 years of your life? You're gonna give up all that you have? I mean, they've seen my pictures with my family on Instagram. You're gonna give that up? Are you serious? You know, I had people that loved me and that knew that I had to fight. I just didn't want to. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. I will make up. And then one day, my cousin tricked me, and he paid for this thing where I had to go over the week, and I ended up going into a man's retreat. I was like, oh. The last thing I wanted, I was like, no, you know. And sure enough, I went there, man, and God got a hold of me, and that was all I needed. That was all I needed. All that anger, all that was gone. And when I came back to my wife at that moment, you know, after, being this type of person saying, baby, I messed up. I love you. Let's go on. She didn't believe me. She didn't have to. I mean, I was terrible, you know, but it all works in time with steps, you know, little by little. You know, you make it work little by little, my friends. You know, it's not at that moment. A lot of people are like, well, I don't see no change in her. I said, are you kidding? I said, I'm not manipulating ever again. I'm letting God do his thing. You know, I mean, so quick. You know, I don't see her at church preaching. Really? You know, you do have that coming though, sweetheart. You're going to be preaching a lot. I'm just telling you guys, man, fight for your families. Man, fight for your children. You know, I thank everybody here today because not only did I get inspired by the people that have come up here, but also, you know, when I was away, my kids were scattered. My daughter would come over here, Pastor. I don't know if you saw her. She was tore up. Your wife was holding her and praying for her the whole time. She was going through it. She developed an eating disorder because of these situations. She's back, though. You know? My older daughter left. She came back. My son, you're never going to be insecure again, son. Never again. And sweetheart, don't be afraid. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. Fight for your family. For your son, for your daughters, for your husband, for your home. And I'm just going to close with this. Men in discipleship, I'm telling you, It only takes a little bit of God to take all that crap away. Man, cleanse yourselves. Look, man, I'm crying up here. Bro, that's another thing we were taught wrong. Men don't cry. What? I've become a crybaby since God came into my life. I'm the biggest crybaby that ever lived. And it's not for anything. I don't just cry like, my wife will take me to a romantic movie and she'll be crying. I'll be like, It does, it's, you know what it is? I'm just grateful that the Lord loves me. That's it. And this TV show that's coming out right now, you know, it's TV and everything, but it's the first time they give us the opportunity to talk about the Lord and to see how we're reshaping and we're coming together as one. All the glory be to God forever and ever. I love you guys.
That was the most dynamic testimony I've ever heard in my life. I cannot believe how incredible that was. Thank you, Pastor.
Come on, can we just give God thanks for this unbelievable word? You know, I just told Gerardo that was probably the most powerful testimony I've ever heard from somebody in the industry who really had a vulnerability and an openness